Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Monday, May 22nd, 2023. Welcome to day 853. California, Arizona, and Nevada agreed to reduce their water usage from the Colorado River in order to help keep Lake Mead and Lake Powell from falling to critically low levels. Under the agreement, the states will voluntarily conserve 3 million acre-feet of water until 2026, roughly 13% of those states' total allocation from the river. In exchange, they'll receive $1.2 billion in federal funding. The deal comes as the water levels in the Colorado River, as well as Lake Mead and Lake Powell, have declined to their lowest levels on record during the 23-year ongoing mega drought. The Colorado River supplies water to more than 40 million people, 30 tribal nations, and roughly 5.5 million acres of farmland across 7 states. The electricity generated by dams at Lake Mead and Lake Powell also provide power to millions of homes and businesses across 8 states. Meanwhile, the World Meteorological Organization reported that weather and climate-related disasters have now killed more than 2 million people and caused economic damage in the range of more than $4.3 trillion over the last half-century. 90% of those 2 million deaths occurred in developing countries. The WMO tallied nearly 12,000 extreme weather, climate, and water-related events during that time. Meanwhile, a third of the global population will live in dangerously hot conditions by the year 2080 if average global temperatures continue as usual, on track to rise 2.7 degrees Celsius in the final 2 decades of the century. This according to researchers from Exeter University's Global Systems Institute. Under the current projections, India, Nigeria, and Indonesia would suffer the worst impacts, with 600 million, 300 million, and 100 million people respectively living in dangerously hot areas. However, if global warming is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius, it would reduce the number of people affected to 90 million in India, 40 million in Nigeria, and 5 million in Indonesia. Moving on, the NAACP issued a travel advisory for Florida, warning that Republican Governor Ron DeSantis' aggressive attempts to erase Black history and to restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Florida schools have turned the state into an openly hostile place for people of color and members of the LGBTQ+ community. The travel advisory comes 4 months after Florida rejected the College Board's new advanced placement course in African American Studies and warns travelers that the governor and the state of Florida have shown that African Americans are not welcome in the state of Florida. And finally, the FBI violated their own standards more than 278,000 times when using a warrantless surveillance program to investigate people suspected of participating in the January 6th insurrection, as well as the George Floyd protests, and donors to a congressional candidate whose campaign was a possible target of foreign influence. The candidate involved was not elected to Congress. FBI officials, however, say they've already fixed the issue by tightening restrictions to the warrantless surveillance program. The improper searches were blamed on a misunderstanding between FBI analysts and DOJ lawyers about how to properly use the program. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act expires at the end of this year unless Congress reauthorizes the surveillance tool. And in the polls, Axios says 35% of Americans say their financial situation is worse off compared to a year ago, the highest level since 2014. 73% say they were doing okay financially in 2022, down 5 percentage points from 2021. And the Associated Press says 33% of Americans say they approve of Joe Biden's handling of the economy. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.